Hi, I'm Gil Winch, author of Winning with Underdogs and founder of CY, a social business. Today in the show, we're going to talk about how kindness and caring can transform you into the best leader ever. We're going to talk about how the cure for the Great Resignation is just under your nose. And all you need to do is remove the blinds in order to see it. We're also going to talk about how escape rooms and social onboarding and reserved employment can actually transform your business and make it much more profitable and also much more enjoyable. And we're probably going to mention how being diagnosed with a terminal illness can actually transform not only your own life, but the lives of so many others if you take it into the right direction. So please stay tuned.
Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with Gil Winch. He has a Ph.D. in psychology. He's a TED speaker. He's a keynote speaker. He is the author of a book called Winning with Underdogs. And we talked about in part 1 how he was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and that would be enough for most people to sort of throw in their hat and say, I'm out. But instead, he took on a massive challenge, and he said purposely chose something that would take a long time to keep him powered through, transformed his life, and in the process has transformed employment. And we're going to talk more about that. But we in the previous one, part 1, and if you didn't listen to part 1, go back and listen to it. I promise you'll really enjoy it. Fabulous story of a man who's really overcome a lot of hurdles, but about why it's important to fight for underdogs. And one of the things that Gil was talking about is that maybe we're good people. Maybe we would never like to think of ourselves as being discriminatory, but maybe we are conditioned not to see things that we just sort of dismiss that are actually, if we could see them, would be incredibly helpful to us, particularly in this time of the Great Resignation and quiet quitting and people who are showing up for work but not really doing anything, and people who have just thrown in the towel. And yet there are so many unemployed people who are a talent pool that you've never touched into. And Gil was talking about how those are the unemployed people who are under the category of disabled, and that I think, what was it you said, 80 to 90% of those people are unemployed? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's insane when particularly you think about, okay, well, if you're disabled and you can't move your legs and you actually sit in front of a computer, how is that a disability? It's actually probably more of an ability than for somebody like me my ass is going to get stiff, right? It's actually good. You can do it. And there's a bunch of other ones too. So this is really important and powerful thing, particularly if you're a leader and you're looking for talent. We're going to get into how to find that talent in a moment. But one of the things we finished on in the end of part 1, we talked about people with criminal records. And in the United States, there are so many people. There's 70 million Americans, 1 in 3 adults who have a criminal record. And oftentimes they can't get at work because somebody's not willing to take a chance on them. They've done their time. They've paid their price, oftentimes for things that are not criminal anymore, but were criminal back in the day. And these people can't work. And it's not that they don't. I mean, it's almost like I've said this many times. The prison industrial system is a very, like, if you think that prisons are run by governments, go do your research. They're not. They're run by private companies, mostly, not all, but mostly, who profit enormously from them. They use the prisoners as slave labor, 20 cents a day. And then those guys come out and they've learned new skills in how to be a criminal, but they actually want to be straight and they want to get a job, but they can't get one. It doesn't take long before they're frustrated and throwing in the towel. And these are people with enormous skills and enormous talents. So that's kind of where we finished off. I want to just sort of pick that up if I can, Gil.
Sure.
Because the pushback is going to be, well, my insurance doesn't let me employ these people. or we would have to build different ramps or different things for these disabled people. How do we confront those, again, those biases inside of our head or inside of our companies?
We'll start with the disabled people on the ramp.
Yes.
A large majority of people with disabilities don't need any kind of physical accommodation or adjustment at all. For 30 years now, building codes are such that buildings have ramps.
Yes.
You're not going to find yourself out of pocket hiring people with disabilities and transforming the way your office looks. That's just an excuse. It's just not necessary.
Right.
Right. And if you specifically don't have a ramp, hire someone who's legally blind or schizophrenic or something. But that it's really not an issue. And regarding ex-cons, and we started out with 100% people with disabilities, but after a few years, I figured there are other populations out there that are also, you can't see them at the workplace, and they also need a shot. So we opened our doors to all the underdogs, and I have lots of people, ex-cons working for me, and I have quite a few people who are working for me from prison. They get special permits to leave prison, work with us. There are all sorts of rules we have to follow, and then they take a bus back to prison. I don't employ anybody who was prisoned for any kind of violence that was premeditated.
Right.
I have someone in for manslaughter, but it wasn't premeditated at all. It's not the kind of person you'd be afraid of.
Right.
But we've had so many ex-cons working and still working for us. I've never, ever had one problem with them. And if you believe in when people are charged, because they're not always, charged correctly, but if they're charged and they've paid their price, why are we charging them again?
Yes.
They've paid their price. It's costing us so much money to keep them out of the workplace. It's ruining their lives to keep them out of the workplace. And I don't buy into the fact that insurance will say anybody with any kind of a criminal record, any kind, can't work for you because then we won't insure you. I don't think life is that general. I think that they wouldn't want you putting someone, let's say, on the credit cards if their name ends with Madoff or something. But I'll get it. And by the way, the Israeli version, who was a female, worked for me for 5 years and it was amazing.
Yeah?
Yeah, she closed the bank, but she worked for me for 5 years and it was amazing.
Really?
And yeah, I'm telling you, we just had, especially ex-cons, they are so thankful and there's such need to prove themselves.
Exactly.
I don't know. I think it's such a huge mistake from any level you want to look at it. But those are just excuses.
So what kind of pushbacks do you get when you're talking? I know you speak around the world.
Yeah.
And you must get pushback from employers who are like, what kind of pushback do you get? And how do you deal with that?
Well, the kind of pushback I get usually is that people say to me, there's a huge difference between theoretical and practical, and you're talking to us in theory. And then I said, well, you haven't really read my bio, have you? Because I've paid out of pocket for every mistake I've made hiring the underdogs. Yes. And I haven't been paying much, I got to say. So no, I'm talking from a fully practical point of view. Yes. And I point out something else that people don't really think of. And it'll take me a minute to explain, but I think it's really, really important.
Okay.
There was a survey asking people, if you could do exactly what you're doing at work, but do it with a place with strong social purpose, would you be willing to give up any of your future life earnings? And if so, how much in percentages?
Yeah.
I was blown away by the answer, but happily blown away. It was 23%. And these were managers, regular employees, thousands of them were surveyed. And the average was 23%, just to do exactly what they're doing today, but with social purpose, because we are good people. We want to go home thinking, I did more than provide for myself and my family. I did something beyond that. It's such a great feeling, and everybody listening who's ever done something like that knows what a wonderful feeling it is. And I'm saying you can have the cake and eat it and keep it, because you can employ people who really need that chance. Yes. You'll get exceptional employees. They'll stay so much long. The average in my company is about 4 times longer, and not just people with disabilities, everybody working for me, and we're a call center. Our longevity of managers and staff is so much longer than everywhere else. And then you can invest in them because they're sticking around, and they are the most loyal core of the company.
And call centers are famous for churn, right? They're famous for, like, of all the businesses, they're famous for churn.
Yeah.
People are there,
and depression and anxiety, by the way.
Yeah, a day, a week, a month, and then we're out, right? And your people stick around in a bloody call center for years,
and they're happy, and they're healthy, and they're healthy. And if you could, I think, I'll put it this way: if you have a chance, and I'm talking to anybody listening, during your life, to change the fortunes of someone who's had a really tough shake because they're disabled or they went to prison or something, if you can transform even one person's life using your station, wherever you are, when you retire and you talk to your grandkids, you're not going to be telling them about the wonderful bonus you got because you hit the target. You'll be telling them with a tear in your eye about that person who you not only gave a chance to, you helped them make that chance work, which is needed as well. And you transformed someone's life, and that creates so much happiness, I think. And obviously it also creates health, at least for me. And it's also more addictive, I think, than crack cocaine, because it's such a powerful feeling that you want to have it again. And I think you can do a great service to your company, to your community, your country, and to individuals and their families by opening your doors to people you wouldn't consider and helping them make it. Maybe you'll be putting in a bit more effort at the beginning, but it will be the best effort, the best investment you've done.
But you said something earlier that I want to just reference, and that is that the pushback is often you're talking about something theoretical and this is practical and it's difficult for us, blah, blah, blah. And I emphasize blah, 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 because if you missed the intro of part 1, we talked about that Gil has a for-profit organization. Tell us why you didn't do this, crusade and, get the government behind you and not profit and, make the social change. Why did you decide to go that path?
Okay. It's a great question, and I think I have a decent answer. Everyone's skeptical. I knew that once, it took me about a year to interview people and create a map of all the reasons people with disabilities are really out of a job. And these aren't the reasons government know about. And I haven't found any other body, institute, foundation, or country that has done that map. And by now we've interviewed 15,000 people. So it's a very robust map of the real reasons people with disabilities are out of a job. And it took me another 4 years. Cancer needed to have a lot of patients. It took me another 4 years to come up with a model which I thought I could cater to each of the reasons I heard about. But then I wanted to change the world, and I thought I'd build a showcase to prove to everybody that people with disabilities and other populations can be as productive as anybody else and earn regular wages if you know what they need to bring their abilities to bear. And if I would have opened a foundation, people would have said, yeah, but it's a foundation. You get all sorts of other kind of sources of income. It's not the same thing. And we became a call center for one reason. I don't have a special, nobody can argue about our productivity. There are always many other teams doing exactly the same work that my teams are doing, and it's an apples to apples comparison on every employee, and nobody would argue or can argue with me about regular productivity. So that's why we went with a regular for-profit company. I called it the social business because we haven't given out any dividends, and no one in the company can earn more than 5 times the lowest salary. So if management wants to earn more, make everybody else earn more.
Right.
And by the way, we don't have anybody who's reached 4 times the lowest salary.
Right.
And it's amazing. I have people wanting to work for me or willing to give up so much of the regular salary, and they get the lower part of their salary working for me. All if there's a scale, we're on the bottom part of the scale.
Yeah.
And people are so happy and content and fulfilled. And I, as a manager, I just apply brakes all the time.
Right.
Get off the WhatsApp groups. You're on holiday. Why are you passing emails after 8 in the And that's my job. Step on the brakes, because everybody is so engaged and
Beautiful.
so, want to prove themselves and what we do to everyone. So that's the reason I went that way.
Beautiful.
And I didn't get government aboard, by the way.
No.
In fact, the opposite is true.
Really?
I took government to court twice.
What do you mean? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I was under the mistaken impression that governments and bureaucrats would be really happy to hear why other people aren't hiring people with disabilities, what sort of crinks in their armor, or what sort of processes do they have that don't really work and are keeping people out.
Yes.
So I thought it would be great. They'd be really happy to hear my feedback.
Yeah.
Apparently they weren't that happy. I'm not sure I gave it in the best way either, but to be truthful,
Yeah.
They weren't that happy. And I found myself in an all-out war with 5 government officers, and it was ugly. It was publicized. We went to court twice. Things have been much better since, and we've corrected them. But I was fighting my own health survival battle. Our company was fighting its own survival battle, and not because we weren't doing well, but because we were fighting government for all sorts of things. And there's a whole chapter in the book about that. It's a really interesting story because, it's never fight City Hall. It wasn't City Hall. It was 5 ministries. Right. And we won in both cases. And we won because it's an interesting story. I won't get into it. But
I encourage people to get the book and read it from that point. So let's talk about the practicality of this.
Okay.
I'm part of a HR hiring team, or I'm a CEO, and I'm hearing from HR, there's no talent. You can't find people. The Great Resignation, people have disappeared, and the ones who are showing up are half-assed. What's the practicality of how do I step into this? Because, as you said, I think that people, not because they're a-holes, but because they just don't know it even exists, right? It's that old Yiddish story of the rabbi who goes underneath the bridge to look for the gold that he sees in it, that the angel tells him is in the dream, and he looks in there and he's digging, and finally the God comes and says, "Go home, you Meshuggah, there's nothing here. Why don't you just look underneath your own stove?" And he digs underneath the stove and he finds it there. It was always right underneath his nose.
Yeah.
But I think that we can't see it. So walk us through being that person, owning a company, being in HR, whatever it is, and going, this is lovely. Where do I start? This is a great idea. I don't know where to even begin.
Okay. So I'll try and pass through the whole life cycle of the employee briefly with short examples.
Right.
When you have an advertisement or an ad saying, I'm looking for employees with superior verbal skills, then everybody who's been out of the workplace for a while and has lost confidence won't answer that ad. Now, they do have superior skills, but they don't feel that way because they've lost confidence after being out of work for a while. So they won't even turn up. They won't even answer the ad. Write your ads differently. When they do turn up, the current way of traditional screening, and that's what the TED Talk is about, is so stupid because you're just screening for anxiety management. And if people manage anxiety well, they'll pass screening. And if they don't, they won't. It's got nothing to do with their true potential.
No.
In fact, anxiety and screening, not for special populations, for everybody. Anxiety and screening is like putting mud on a camera lens. It just blurs what you actually want to see. You want to see The potential is who's sitting in front of you. And everybody makes the same short-term mistake. I want to find the brightest and the best. They're not going to stay with you when you do find them. Actually, the average, slower guys, they'll stay for the long term.
Yes.
You might need to train them just slightly longer, but they'll be so appreciative. You need screening to show you the potential, where the person in front of you can end up, how far they can go, much less where they're at now. Because if you want them for the long term, find people who can serve you well in the long term, and not people who just start out great and then get a buck more somewhere else and leave. So we call it the reverse screening process. We do everything opposite, and it's all tailored to make the process enjoyable for the screener, who's a host, by the way. The candidate, we want them to have a good time with us. We want it to be a mutual process. They grade us at the end of it. It's like an escape room. We put everything into escape rooms to make it a fun process for everybody. Wow. So it's a totally different thing. And then you need to train them. And there's this, I don't know where it came from, but there's so many important metrics in training that are not addressed. For instance, everybody trains people to be professionally good enough, but the person's confidence is also a huge issue. The trainee's confidence, as when he ends the course, has got to be as high as possible. So you have to build a course that will also cater to building confidence as you go away. For instance, building an easy exercise along the way just to show how much they've progressed and stuff like that. It's got to be a metric. No one even looks at it.
Right.
And when you onboard, what happens at onboarding is the new guy who was the least proficient because he's new, joins a team of people who all know each other. He doesn't know anyone. They all have this past and the jokes they can tell about things. He doesn't know what they're talking about. So socially, he feels isolated, not part of. That'll hurt his performance. Everybody's going to have to put in more effort to help him get there. Plan the social onboarding so that people will feel part of the family, the team, as quickly as possible. It will help them to hit their targets as quickly as possible. It will keep them in there. And there's so many attrition of 0 to 3 months because people haven't looked at the social aspect, and we're social animals.
Yes. And
then we came upon the problem of, all right, we want to move people up in the company, and we want to take all sorts of people who are with disabilities or ex-cons, and we want to make them into team leaders and managers. But they they still have limited, their confidence is coming back, but it's not there altogether.
No.
They're not specifically charismatic. How do we turn them into leaders?
Yes.
And I think we do the most important thing, and there is one word that we all believe is the most important word in management. And the amazing thing is that if you put that word in Google Scholar together with the word management, you won't find one research paper because it's not considered a managerial word. And I'll tell it to you in a second. I just want to point out that as primates, we have evolved to provide within a tribe.
Yes, we're tribal.
As hominids, primates, and as humans. And a tribe is of tens of people, 150 people, but everyone in a tribe has a job. No one can sit aside. Everyone is needed. Everyone has a job. Everyone is cared for. You can have fights and arguments, but basically everyone is cared for.
Yes.
And that's how we've evolved to work every day.
Yeah.
And it's only since the Industrial Revolution where so many of us are leaving our homes, and now we're going to work with people where there's no caring, and at the best case, we're an asset.
Right.
And 70% of the world suffer emotionally at work, work-related stress, anxiety, no home-work balance. And that's because we work in cold corporate cultures, and that's not who we are as people. We've evolved to work in a warm community, caring environment. That's when we can do our best work for the long term.
Mm-hmm.
So we put an awful lot of effort into creating a culture of managerial care. That means managers need to know their teams personally. You want a manager saying when someone comes in, so how was your kid's biology test the other day? And how is your husband feeling? It's always personal. And business has developed so many sentences so it's not, but it's always, don't take it personally. It's just business. All is fair. And No, it's not fair, and it is
No.
personal. And treat people as social animals with caring, and they will give you everything they have for the long run. And caring is such an important word in management, and it's so missing in
Yes.
so many different cultures.
Yeah.
And you're not going to keep anybody around for long if you don't have it.
Yeah, I agree. So looking at that, you talked, one of the things you brought up that I thought was really interesting is plan the social onboarding, because everybody
Yes.
who's ever worked for anybody knows what it's like to walk in and be the new dude, right? You're walking in, and as you said, there's in jokes, and there's who sits where, and there's when I do cultural work with companies, one of the things I'll say is, what is your culture? And usually they'll hand me some bullshit brochure, and I go, that's not your culture, that's a piece of paper. And they go, no, it represents us. And they go, no, it doesn't. And they go, well, there's our values on the wall. And I go, that's not your culture either. And they go, well, what do you mean? I said, if I went undercover and was here for a week, I'd tell you what the culture is. And they go, well, what is it? And I go, it's everything you think it's not. Your what you think is your culture is your subculture, and your subculture is actually your main culture. Because I put it very simply, that culture is set by leadership, and leadership is always an example. So what that means is, if you're a dick, your culture is dick. That's all there is to it. If you're rude, your culture is rude. You are setting that culture up. So when you talk about this social onboarding or planned social onboarding, how do we go about that, particularly in companies that maybe haven't done this work before at any level?
Okay, I have a short, easy answer. Yeah. Put the team together before the new guy turns up or girl.
Yeah.
And have 2 go-arounds. The first one, and you need a sort of blackboard. You say, everybody, think of a place you joined. It could be even kindergarten. It doesn't have to be a workplace, where even though you were the outsider, they made you feel at home quickest than you've ever experienced. Think of that, and everybody's telling me one thing that people were doing to make you feel that way.
Right.
And that becomes your to-do list.
Right.
And then you say the opposite. Think of one place where you felt the outsider for longest, and you felt not part of, and you were hurt by those feelings. And what happened there to make you feel like that? What behaviors did you encounter? And that would be the don't list.
Yeah.
And once you have those 2 lists, all you need to say is, if we stay on the to-dos, on the do list, and we stay away from the don't list, we will only onboard once, and they'll stay with us for the long term, and they'll be happy quickly, and we won't have to all invest time and effort bringing them up to speed. It's in all our interests. It'll also make us feel really good about ourselves when we go home, which is also really important. And it's a simple thing to do. And the reason I wrote the book, by the way, because I wanted to get our playbook out there, because in order to succeed at diversity, it's not only wanting to make it happen, it's knowing how to do it successfully. Because if you don't onboard or screen correctly or train correctly, then I'll keep on hearing what I hear. Oh, I'm willing to hire people with disabilities. I just haven't found anyone who's suitable. And I say, you have, you just wouldn't know it by the way you go about the screening process.
Right. And that's an interesting thing, because, you talked about building the confidence in that person as they come through the journey, because as you mentioned, these people are not necessarily charismatic. In many ways, they may have been beaten down by the world, whether that's because they're an ex-con who served time, and feels like they're a great underdog in the world, or maybe it's because they have a disability, which again might have been a lifetime disability, but it might have been a sudden one that's suddenly like, I'm not the person I used to be. There's a moment there where you're mopsing around you, Gil, when you were diagnosed, and it's like, woe is me. When I fell off the mountain and got smashed to pieces, I'm walking around going, woe is me. That victim mentality. And I say this to people all the time, society feeds it, right? And by the way, I am absolutely, completely, totally fierce about you should feel the feelings. I'm not saying, oh, buck it up, buttercup. That's bullshit. Like, feel the feelings, be with the grief of whatever it is, and then decide it's not the end. So if it's not the end, what is it the beginning of?
Mm-hmm.
And what you're talking about is saying it's not the end. We can't fix your disability. We can't fix your record, but we can give you another opportunity to see yourself as an active participant in our society in a way that makes meaningful difference. Is that correct?
It's extremely correct. And it's not only being a productive member of society, it's being happy. We can give you back your happiness. And I've always been happy. I said at the beginning, but I think since I was diagnosed 21 years ago now, I've been so much happier during those 21 years with like cancer looming over my head every month than before. And I was happy before.
Yeah.
It's not the end of your life. It can be the beginning of an even better life. And I know lots of people that said, yeah, I lost both my legs, but I'm so much happier now.
Yes.
It's not the end. It's
when people ask me about the fall and they say, it must have changed your life. And I say, no, it didn't. And they go, really? They go, you fell 120 feet, got smashed to pieces. You had all these reconstructive surgeries. You died 5 times. Didn't change your life? I go, nope. It embedded me in my ego. It initially embedded me in my ego. I was like, I'm great. I'm coming back. I was an ex-boxer, ex-martial artist. I've been a leader. I own companies in 3 continents. You're not breaking me down. But until I gave permission to feel the grief of that life ending, I couldn't possibly consider that there was a new life beginning. It was all based on what I'd lost as opposed to what's gone and what I can move into. And it really seems to me, Gil, like your whole philosophy around work in this way is about saying it's not over. You can have a good wine and a good cry, and you can be miserable and you can do all those things. But when you've decided that you've had enough of that shit, right, we want to help you to move forward. And you've done that very successfully in your own organization. But I want to tell you that I really appreciate that you're doing that with other companies, that you're out there on the speaking circuit, that you're telling companies, that you're giving this playbook through your book, so that people can, again, pull off the blinders, see past their own biases, and suddenly recognize that maybe your best employee is somebody with schizophrenia that you would have written off, but who is perfectly balanced because of medication. Or your best person on the phones is somebody who has lost their legs and you never even thought about them, and they don't bloody need their legs to answer a phone. Like, I love that you're doing this, and I love that you're waking us up to it. As we come to the end of the show, if you were to give one practicality for the person who's listened to this and gone, this is really wonderful, it's really powerful, what can I do in the next 5 minutes, next 24 hours?
Okay.
What would be that practicality?
I wanted to introduce a simple concept. I call it reserved employment for the opportunity deprived. And I'll explain it, just like reserved parking.
Right.
Some people can't walk for long distances, so we save a few of the best parking spots for them because they have limited options when it comes to walking.
Right.
Now, I'll just give an example to make it clear. People who have serious hearing disabilities, most of them are out of a job because they can't function on the phones. Sign language is different from country to country. Most people don't speak it. So they're out of a job. Now, most companies have chat teams that give service via chat. And that could be a really great entry-level job for people who have been out of the job market. If you don't save a few of them, for the people with limited options, reserve that employment, then they'll be out of a job. But if you get them hired, then they won't be. People with even cognitive disabilities, they can clean table, do dishes, fix hotel rooms as well as anybody else. They do it with a smile. If we don't reserve some of those jobs, not all, some of them, for people with limited options, they're going to keep on being out of a job. And I challenge you or anybody listening to come up with any kind of disabled person who's not institutionalized. There'll be a job out there or jobs out there that they can do for regular productivity and regular wages, and they are just not available. And then they get chances that aren't really opportunities because it's the wrong job for them. Everybody can look at their own company and say, you know what, that job over there, that would be good for people with PTSD because it's very relaxed and stuff. And this would be good for people with this disability. And that would be good for ex-cons because they don't have to deal with money at the beginning. We can build trust with them. If you think that way, being diverse becomes ever so much more easy.
Yes.
I don't know many companies that think that way, but I'm trying to convince more and more.
And I really appreciate that. And the key to it is, number one, the willingness. And number two, which you go into in great detail, is the screening process, that we've got to change the way we're screening for people so that we're not excluding, but we're including, so that we can have people show up and give their very best because that's what they want to do. Thank you so much, Gil. It's been a pleasure and honor, sir. Really appreciate it. Before we go, please tell people where they can find out more about you, your book, and your services.
Well, my book is at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, all sorts of other places, Winning with Underdogs. If you buy it, please read it. And as you say, leave a review.
Yes.
It's important to get the word out there.
Yeah.
I have a website where you can contact me. You can contact me via LinkedIn. And I have a TED Talk, which you can't contact me, but you can watch it and it'll save you reading a chapter from the book. And when people reach out either via email or LinkedIn, I'm always responsive. And I'm happy to connect to people. And what's keeping me alive for the past 41 years, I think, because I'm doing really good. You can see me, and others can't, but I'm doing really good. Is that the world is a big place, and we really need to change it regarding underdogs and employment. And until it's changed, and I think that might take a while, I'm sticking around and doing everything I can to create that change.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Gil. You're a mensch. You're a mensch among menches. Thank you, sir. And
thank you so much for having me, Dov.
It's a pleasure and honor. And for you, dear listener, remember that you can tune into the show wherever you get podcasts. You can please share the show with everybody else that you know, and just really grasp. And this episode, these two episodes are really a great example of those who control the meaning for the tribe control the movement of the tribe. What is the meaning you're associating to these people that is moving your tribe away from seeing them? What if you change the meaning for the tribe, and then you'll control the movement of that tribe? Business and political leaders committed to positively shaping the business and political landscape know that we've got to tap into what drives human behavior. And you can tap into the groundbreaking understanding of how to apply the emotional source code and the anatomy of meaning to transform your business. I'm Dov Baron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified actualized meaning is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for individuals and companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about the biases that are running your life, that are blocking you from seeing the most powerful, useful, valuable employees who not only want to work for you, but will be loyal and caring. What about exactly that? Let's get curious about how we can be a heck of a lot more caring in all that we do with all the people that we employ. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.